Hi, everyone. We're going to start now. Thank you all for coming. This is the Keene State Debate Club and the American Democracy Project's annual Modern Issues Surrounding College Culture debate. First, we just want to thank The Mills, which is a new apartment complex being built off campus. They were the ones who provided us with the pizza, so everyone, if you haven't gotten a piece of pizza, you can go back there and get some. And if you want to check out the Mills of Keene, you can go to themillsofkeene.com to learn more information about that. So first, I am Matthew Pereira. I am the Secretary of Keene State Debate, and I will be facilitating the debate. And then we have Ryan Scrivano, Alyssa DeMarco, Rory Vogel, and Nick Hebert, who will be participating in the debate. Each of the teams will say their main points for 3 minutes, and then there will be a counter argument for another 3 minutes after, and then they will conclude. And after that, you guys with your clickers will be able to vote for the team that you thought presented the argument the best. A will be for team 1, which is Ryan and Alyssa, and B will be for team 2, which is Nick and Rory. So we can start whenever you guys. Oh, just kidding. No, we have a disclaimer. We are a neutral party on campus, and therefore we are obligated to argue the opposition. So some of the people who will be arguing for certain cases may not necessarily agree with what they are saying, but just for the sake of debate, they present this case. And our first topic is, should Yik Yak be banned? We just have some questions for you guys to think about while we talk about this topic. First is, have any of you ever been cyberbullied? And then our second question is, how do you feel that there is an app out there where someone could get away with cyberbullying and remain anonymous? And on the opposite side of that, how do you feel about if someone were to make Yik Yak illegal, people taking away your freedom of speech? So arguing for the side that Yik Yak should be banned is Alyssa and Ryan, and then arguing the opposition is Nick and Rory.
I'm Ryan Scrivano, President of the Debate Club, senior here at Keene State. I'm going to be arguing as to why Yik Yak should be banned at Keene State College. Again, this is not really a personal opinion. This is basically taking the side of the argument and explaining the concepts behind what it's really trying to say. So here we go. I have two main concepts, which are called contentions, that I'm going to be explaining. And basically, one of which is the fact that inappropriate statements get posted and sometimes target specific individuals across the board. And that is an essential concept to talk about as to why it shouldn't even be allowed. It's not regular cyberbullying, it's a different form of it that we usually don't see. The second concept I'm going to be explaining is that it can form a form of disturbing the peace in our community, and that's another reason why. So to really talk about the fact that it's basically, and it can have inappropriate statements and it can target specific individuals, at times hate crimes can be posted through Yik Yak. It can target specific groups, it can target specific individuals that we know here at Keene State, and it basically pinpoints an activity or something they're doing or something that occurred. And a lot of us know each other, especially at Keene. This is a mid-sized school, and a lot of people are connected in different ways. And when you see a post happen, I've seen it happen. I knew exactly who was talking about. And it was a direct form of like cyberbullying, talking about an embarrassing event and something that was not needed at all. It is the case in which people actually can downvote and they can get rid of the post. On the contrary to that, it's actually not really 100% effective because people did see it in order to actually download it. So once the word gets out there, if it was enough of a inflated actual statement where people are talking about it, the word's still going to go out to the community and people are going to be discussing it at dinner, at lunch, and basically it's going to be that individual that has the embarrassment they're dealing with. And that's not really what Keene State's about at all. We're a community that's focused on education and being able to have a certain environment where people feel comfortable being in the environment, and this is causing recused disturbance in general. And the other thing I want to really point out is the fact that I actually have a personal example of when this happened to me. I was sitting in the DC, and this was a positive experience, but I was dressed up in a suit because I'm on student government, and basically somebody yik-yacked about us. Look at those guys that are sitting in the DC, they're all dressed up appropriately, but that pinpointed us specifically. So people can get noticed. It doesn't have to be a name, it can be just eye vision and how to describe it. To really go into the second concept of this, basically, age is still an issue. People within high school communities do have access to Yik Yak, and they can be able to actually go within the vicinity of the college, even if they're not on the college, and have access to those posts. These posts do have hate crimes, like I said before, and they're extremely inappropriate sometimes, in which they have inappropriate language and concepts that even high schoolers are not ready for. It's an 18-plus application, but it's not really a healthy environment for having younger kids get access to it. Not every high school does have access to it, but there are those people across the United States that have had experience with this. To really just summarize all these different points, I want to bring up an actual case. Norwich University, 2 hours away from Keene State, banned Yik Yak for these essential reasons. They don't have it active on their campus, and the president was able to basically not allow for this to access within their vicinity because they're having people not feel comfortable being able to be educated. And not necessarily that Keene State's experiencing that today, but it is possible for us to reach that point, and the president does have the ability to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. My name is Nick Hebert. I am the treasurer of the Bay Club here, and I will be arguing for why I think Yik Yak should stay. I'm basically just going to present my case. The rebuttal will be coming after this on our partner sides. And I just don't feel that Yik Yak differs from any other venue as far as internet anonymity goes. You can be anonymous on YouTube, you can be anonymous on Twitter. All you need is an email address to access these things. We all remember how Form Spring went. It was pretty popular, it was anonymous, and it disappeared. So if it's only going to be negative things that we see coming out of Yik Yak, it'll take care of itself. People will stop using the app. If people are in a situation where they have so much social anxiety from a cell phone app that they can't function at school as an 18-plus-year-old, then I don't think they should be at school in the first place. You're here to be an adult, you should be treated as an adult, and if your childhood didn't teach you how to deal with these things that happen on a regular basis, then you probably shouldn't be on your own at school. The world can be a dark and deceiving place. It doesn't have to be, and Yik Yak is, for the majority, not a dark and deceiving place. If you look at the top yaks that are always voted up, they're always for laughs, they're always humorous. And if you don't like the app, don't download it. It's as simple as that. If you took to heart every insult that you ever heard about yourself, you'd be walking around crying for the most of your life. An overwhelming amount of yaks are positive, like I said, and you have the option to vote down. The makers of the app noticed this when they're making it. They weren't completely oblivious to the fact that it could be used negatively. You can vote it down just as fast as you can vote it up. And a lot of times when you see negative things like that, they're gone within an instant. They have it written into their policy that they don't condone bullying. So I don't see how banning it would solve any problems, or cyberbullying, etc. I think that it would be a slippery slope, and we would have to start banning other things that we use on a regular basis. Thank you.
So hi everybody, my name is Alyssa DeMarco and I'm a junior here. I'll be arguing for Yik Yak being banned from our campus. So, as far as Yik Yak being like any other form of social media or anywhere else that anyone can cyberbully, does that mean that that's the standard that we're setting for our social networking, that people are going to be negative, people are going to attack other people, so why not let it happen because we can't prevent it? That's not good enough for our college campus, for the general public. That's not a good enough reason to allow an app like this to exist, that it's going to happen anyway. And as far as the age restrictions, it goes by internet. It's the Wi-Fi server. It's got nothing to do with, you don't make an account, it doesn't know how old you are. Of course you're supposed to be 18, but who knows? Who's checking on that? So just as easily as you can walk into an area where it's not accessible because it's too close to a high school or a middle school, they can just as easily come into the area where it is allowed. And from that, I mean, that's damaging to anyone because that opens it up to anyone. This isn't just a KSC problem, this becomes a Keene area problem. And as far as like the posts that are getting the most upvotes being positive, what does that mean? What does that mean that it's getting the most upvotes? Do positive posts on Facebook get the most likes and that's what people pay attention to? It doesn't matter if that's what's getting the most likes, the most upvotes, the most attention, the negative ones are still there, and it's still a part of what's being posted and what's being put out into the world, and you can't just take back something that you're saying, and people need to start being held accountable for that. And of course, legal adults, students in college, they should be held accountable. They're legal adults, they're 18, 19, 20 years old. That doesn't mean they're going to act like it. I think college campuses across the country prove that we don't always act like we're supposed to, and clearly, YICAC has shown in the past few months that students cannot always handle having this kind of free reign over saying whatever they want and having no accountability, not having any way to track who's saying what, and kind of being okay with it. So I'm going to end on that I think we should start looking at the standards for what our social networking is, and are we okay with what the standard is. It's going to happen anyway. That's not a very good choice. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Rory. I'm a senior, and I will be rebutting for the banning of YICAC. So let's focus on the facts here. YICAC is not a widespread issue on campus. It's just fact. YICAC doesn't foster or even condone, as Nick said, malicious community on Keene's campus at all. But you can open it up right now and not see any individuals being singled out, bullied, or criticized. When cyberbullying is involved, YICAC alone isn't the issue. It's anonymity on the internet. And it's existed since 1999 message boards. It's existed on Facebook, Twitter, you name it. Now, the opposition argues for punishing the student body and taking away YICAC. I mean, I don't know for you, but it's clear to me that students can behave themselves. You'll see names, you'll see descriptions, you'll see personal attacks removed almost instantly on YICAC. I would label that as a healthy community, wouldn't you? Punishment, banking on the presumption that students cannot behave themselves, is frankly condescending, and that they need their privileges taken away is just irrational and poorly justified. I really don't see what's the argument here. Keene has yet to cause any problems. If you're attempting to mitigate cyberbullying, you might as well remove Facebook and Twitter. So it's just not going to happen. So if you don't want to use it, don't download it. Thank you.
So I'm going to be wrapping up the concept on behalf of the case and explaining why YICAC in a whole, the reasons behind why it should be banned from Keene State community. And to really emphasize the point, I want to point out the fact that it is the case where the majority do handle it appropriately. And it is the case where people can download it and they can get rid of the app, or can get rid of the statement that's made within the application. But, like I said before, to negate Rory's point, it does get out in the public. People have to see it to download it. And people see it, and it can't be changed. Once it's knowledge that's been around there, that's been put out there, you can't change that as a factor. And that's really the disturbance behind it. Even if only, say, 10 people from this college are posting that. Number one, you can't track those 10 people. You can't presume any actual reason as to who they could be. You can't have any reason to justify going into the application data center and basically pinpointing, can you look up these people who are posting this? There's no consequence, as was pointed out. And that's the issue we're facing here. They don't have any thought behind them sometimes before they post something. And it's a free-for-all. It is the case, like I said before, where a lot of us are older than 18, actual adults. But on the contrary to that, like I said before, there is no actual way to verify within a phone if that person is of age to be able to do it. And people are getting exposed to these kind of statements that are not of age to be able to understand the concepts behind it. And it's disturbing. So I see it as the minority this time actually outweighs the majority that are handling it. And in this instance, it's really not an appropriate way for us to have as a community for this application to be active with these consequences we're dealing with. We're a community that's meant to be educated. We're Keene State, and we are a great group of students here. But even if this is fun and games and everything, there comes a time where it's actually what's better. Fun and games, while there's a lot of problems with it, or just basically getting rid of a situation where it can actually have a lot more benefit than it does to have it be still present. So as a whole, that's why YICAC should be banned from the side of the case, and it shouldn't be allowed to be within our community anymore. I understand it's very kind of like a weird concept to think about, that we have to be controlled like that, because it is a free form of speech, but this is a different situation we're dealing with. And it's a very unique way to be able to express yourself, which is why we're saying it shouldn't be allowed. Thank you.
I'm just going to conclude by saying, are we going to allow this to be the standard for raising our children? Do we want everything that they come into contact with, whether they are in middle school, high school, or in college, as we all are now, do we want them to just walk through life thinking that bullying doesn't exist because they don't come into contact with it? If we start by deleting Yik Yak, where do we go from there? You have people getting bullied on Facebook, you have people getting bullied on Twitter. It's cyberbullying. It's something that needs to be combated by people who are also using that medium, not just eliminating the medium altogether. Because we could even move away from digital and start removing everyday things. Like there are schools that have banned tag on the playground because of the risk of people getting hurt. It's just a ridiculous path to go down. And I don't think that when you're in the real world and you're done with school, you're going to encounter people that are going to give you entirely positive feedback. And it's just the reality of things. I'm not trying to be pessimistic here, but you're going to face ups and downs when you leave this school. This is not the real world. This is a very positive experience. You're with like-minded individuals. You're having intellectual conversations. You're participating in groups and clubs where people are in the same sort of mindset as you. But when you get into the real world, you're going to see a lot more diversity. You're going to see people from different backgrounds. You're going to see people that have been through a lot of crap. And they've dealt with it, and it made them the person that they are, and they got to that same position as you, and you're going to be competing with them. You're not going to have to bully them. You're going to have to prove yourself by proving that you can take the criticism and you can better yourself. And I don't think that we should ban Yik Yak because I really think that it could lead to a very ill-prepared society coming out of schools. Thank you.
And that concludes our first topic, so if everyone can take your clickers just to make sure that they're on, and you can now vote for which team you thought was the best. Ryan and Alyssa, you can press A, and Rory and Nick, you can press B, and then once you're all done, you can load up the results. And it looks like Nick and Rory are the winners. Yay, so give them a round of applause. Our next topic is, do you think that freshmen and sophomores should be required to live on campus? Just some questions for you to think about for the topic. Do you think that freshmen and sophomores should live off campus if it saves them money? And then to kind of oppose that, do you think that freshmen and sophomores can handle themselves living off campus even though they are fairly new to the whole college experience and to the Keene community? So we're going to have Rory and Nick arguing that freshmen and sophomores should be required to live on campus, and then Ryan and Alyssa will be the opposing side that freshmen shouldn't be required to live on campus. And you can go whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I will be arguing for freshmen and sophomores not having to live on campus mandatory. So I know you, Ryan, have never lived on or off campus before. So for those unaware who never have, let's examine kind of how different off-campus and on-campus housing is. So off-campus has no RAs, better housing environment, more personal freedom generally. On-campus has RAs, quiet hours, courtesy hours, guest limits, clean bathrooms, desk attendance. It's an environment of, we don't trust you even if you're legal adults. College should be an environment, to expand as an adult and as an independent individual. We should be promoting personal responsibility and preparing for the real world. If you ask me, living within a dorm sounds like I'm back in preschool. Of course, dorm structure is valuable, but it's artificial and focuses on unrealistic expectations of people. And many individuals do like dorms, and that's fine. But for people with different ambitions in college, they should have the choices best suited for them. And to have their choices taken away and funneled into generalized housing doesn't really make sense to me. So should it be mandatory? Absolutely not. Thank you.
Sorry guys, I actually messed up. Rory and Nick will be arguing that freshmen and sophomores should be able to live off campus, and Ryan and Elizabeth are arguing that they should be required to live on campus. I'm sorry about that, the confusion with that.
What? I messed up.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm gonna leave.
You want to argue for?
What just
I know they don't have to live on campus. I live there.
No, you guys are in favor of having them on campus.
They not have to.
All right. Right.
All right, this is gonna be totally off the top of my head here due to a little mix up with the sides here, but I can do it. All right, so I'm gonna be taking the side now that students should be required to live on campus. When you think about the factors, students are not of age to be able to think on top of their feet of how to survive when they're all of a sudden in a different atmosphere. They're used to being catered by their parents. They're used to being in an actual safe atmosphere where they have people to advise them and basically be by their side. And if you all of a sudden stick kids out in public where they're basically living on their own, taking the full responsibility to be able to sustain living on their own without being in a dormitory, like a concept of the dorm, then you're basically putting your own kids at risk. And kids are not of age. Some of them are 17, in fact. Some kids are not of age to be able to handle that type of responsibility behind them. And the fact that you're going to allow them the freedom when college is already a challenge enough and you're going to put more responsibility on them, that's going to create more conflict with students perhaps not being able to graduate and sustain being a freshman in college. That's a major issue. I understand the idea of being able to be free, being not controlled to the extent by having an RA on your floor is a great option. And I don't live off campus, so I can't say it from personal experience, but I can say the fact that across the board when you're a freshman, you are not responsible to an extent because you don't understand what it's like to live on your own. After 2 years of being in a dormitory, you start to develop the ability to be responsible, learning the essential skills of living on your own. You might not have to cook on your own, but you're at that's the only real thing. Between that and paying your bills, that's the only changeover. And that's when you're of age to do it to an extent, in my view, as a junior or senior, because you're ready to handle that kind of responsibility. That responsibility entails time commitment. It takes time out of your schedule to basically have your own survival skills. And you don't have all the leisure that you do in a dormitory. So what I'm looking at this as a whole is basically, I can say from experience that living on campus has allowed for me to develop myself into who I am today. I wouldn't have all these executive board positions across the board at this college and be comfortable with myself if I had to have the responsibility to have an apartment, pay the bills, make sure that if anything happened, that I would call my landlord. It's a headache, and I'm sure for people who live outside of this campus can say that it is more responsibility, and it is challenging as you face that responsibility. And sometimes it doesn't work in your favor. Sometimes the landlords do not help you, and they basically don't come forth when they should to fix different damages that have happened. And you're going to put that responsibility on an 18-year-old who just comes to college and could possibly not even be surviving their classes. That's unrealistic. And that's why kids shouldn't be required to live, or shouldn't have the option to live off campus. They are an adult, but like anything, there's rules and age limits. Thinking about drinking, you have to be 21, you have to be mature and responsible. At Keene State, they see it as you have to have experience and you have to be ready to live off campus. Same exact concept, different issue, but this is what it comes down to in my view. So thank you for that, and this is essentially why a student should not be able to live off campus when they first enter college. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, and continuing in the tradition of freestyling this topic, if we had a little bit of confusion, we apologize. But that's what we teach in debate, is how to think on the fly. So I actually do think that it should be an option for freshmen and sophomores to live off campus, because it's the ultimate responsibility. It's treating them like the 18-year-old that they are. You can join the army, you can join the military when you turn 18. You can die for your country, but you can't live off campus at a college. That seems a little backwards to me. And I know that 18 can mean a lot different things for a lot of people. I've seen some very young 18-year-olds and some very old 18-year-olds. I personally was probably a little bit in between. I was always in school with kids that were older than me in my grade, not necessarily because I was as mature as them, but I just had a better reading level than them, I guess, or an accurate one, an equatable one. But aside from me, I think that it's really important to not need like that parent or guardian that you get when you get an RA. I personally don't agree with having RAs. I know that they help a lot of people and they're very important to a lot of people because it can be extremely difficult to be away from your family. But it seems like a pacifier for the real world. And I'm not talking down about any RAs because I've actually had the pleasure of having quite a few fantastic RAs in my day. And they've contributed a lot to the person that I've become, so I'm very thankful for that. But I do think you should have the choice. You shouldn't be forced into living in this block-style housing that is incredibly moldy and dirty, and you have a certain hour that you can talk at a certain volume until you have people patrolling the hallways at night, making sure you're not doing anything you're not supposed to. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds a bit like martial law to me. It doesn't sound like having fun at college. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's how I felt on some nights with the way that the RAs walked around the hallways patrolling. I didn't feel that that was necessary in any way. I could handle myself. I could put myself to bed. I really don't think that it's necessary to live on campus, and it's more expensive. So it should be people's options, especially those who aren't as fortunate with their financial situation. Thank you.
Okay, so just once again, my name is Alyssa, and I will be arguing that freshmen and sophomore should be required to live on campus. Just checking. Okay. So the only real argument against it is that you're being watched all the time. Well, just for everyone in the audience, I want you to think back to when you were 18, 19, a freshman in college. Were you ever caught with anything in your room? And by anything, I mean anything that would get you in trouble. Well, guess what? When you're off campus living in a house and you get caught drinking underage or you get caught with drugs, literally anything, they're not calling your RA, they're calling the police. And so, is that really the wake-up call that we want to be giving freshmen in college, that if you screw up one time, you're potentially done with school. You're being arrested, and that's going on your permanent record. You're not going through the conduct system of the school, you're going through the police station. And that's not always necessary. Sometimes it takes just that one time to get through to someone that they don't need to be doing that, and they shouldn't be doing that, and they're not living in an environment for adults while they're doing that kind of behavior. Also, it's not always necessarily more expensive living on campus, depending where you are. It varies. Every dorm on campus is slightly different, and what are you getting? So you're getting somewhere to live, all of your utilities are being paid, you're getting free laundry on campus, and you're paying for your meal plan. Well, if you want to go off campus and start paying for that, I can almost guarantee it will be a lot more. And as for just basic life skills, not every freshman in college can do laundry or can grocery shop on their own, and those are things that need to be learned. And they can be learned during the 2 years that they're required to live on campus. There's no reason not to. So I'm going to wrap it up with that, I think. So thank you.
Okay, so to conclude, I'm just going to say, generally, living off campus is a very appealing option. Nick said it is much less expensive. That is very true in many cases. Alyssa's arguing that, you know, there's all sorts of variations in dorms. Well, there's all sorts of variations in houses. There's many circumstances where you have all your utilities paid for. You're very close to campus. Similar to a dorm, it costs much less a month. And when we're arguing about, you know, having RAs watching us, if you're caught in a dorm, they will call the police as well. It's not like campus safety is going to lock you up. When you have an environment where you're being treated as, not necessarily an adult, you kind of end up in a position where you aren't really growing as a person. You're kind of stuck in the same, living at your parents' house, always having bedtime, always having someone, kind of watching over you. And unfortunately, college is not about that. I know specifically, for me, as soon as I lived off campus, entirely different experience. I said I would not go back to living on a dorm, mainly because it taught me a lot of personal responsibility, having to pay my bills, things that we should learn how to do. Do your laundry, things you should be doing and know how to do, after your 4 years. And it's better to learn earlier. So having the choice definitely is a better option. I think, looking at, an individual who's 18 years old coming right in, they should be able to say, okay, I think I can handle it by myself. And of course, there's some individuals who cannot, some people who want some structure, some people who want to be able to actually have a little confined area where they can grow and they can kind of base themselves, and that's completely fine. But many individuals do not want that. Many individuals I know will come in and have a lot of experience with themselves, have a lot of experience being independent and wanting to do other things. So, should it be mandatory? I don't think so. Thank you.
All right. I want to emphasize one extremely important concept here, and that's the fact that they're arguing in the sense where it's less expensive and that you're an adult. But in their case, it is less expensive. There's cases where I have friends who are off campus, they're paying $950 a month to live off campus. Add that up, basically it's almost $2,000 extra in living on campus. So it's not always a benefit. And a lot of times you're paying more, you're incurring more responsibility. What's the benefit? I mean, I understand in a sense where it gives you more freedom. You're not being watched. You don't have an RA watching over you. But your RA isn't going to get you in trouble unless you deserve to be in trouble. If you're doing something wrong, they have a right to abide by the rules of the college. And I understand, it's great to be free, great to have the college experience. I enjoyed it myself. But the fact is that there are rules and you can't neglect those rules. And even if you're off campus, if you are 18 and you get caught for drinking, you're going to deal with more severe penalties because you're breaking the law and the police are going to get involved. And are you going to risk your kid for having that kind of level of responsibility when they're just incurring the experience of college? It's not really that easy to transition into it. I had a hard time during my freshman year during the first semester, and I sustained it because I was on campus and I really got to know people. The other factor I really want to emphasize here is the fact that you're living in a community. You're living in a dormitory and you're meeting people. You don't know anybody when you get here. If you're going to have the option to live off campus, you're going to be in a house with 4 people. You're not going to know those 4 people when you first start meeting them, and you're going to feel like you're connected to them. You're not going to expand probably after that as much as you could socially if you had 100 people in the dormitory you're living with. That's what it's about. When you're a junior and senior, you know the people, you're connected, you can live on your own. You can have those responsibilities, you're ready for that. You're at that stage. And you don't have to worry as much about, am I going to be able to handle paying the bills? Am I going to be able to handle situations as they come about? The electricity problems, the oil. You're going to have so much more on you. You are not ready for that. And I just want to emphasize that point. And to really just, all you're going to do in the end of it is you're going to get exposed to a different level of maturity you are not prepared for. So that's the only benefit, and I don't see it as a benefit. Therefore, you shouldn't have the option to live off campus when you're a freshman or sophomore. You can't really take the expense into consideration. I'm a student trustee of our college, and I analyze all the finances behind the reasoning of why it's expensive to live in housing. You can't change that. So that's why I'm saying that you shouldn't be having the option to live off campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, I'm going to conclude by saying that I don't think a dirty oven, a fire hazard for a microwave, and a group of kids who are self-aware that they're being treated like children are going to facilitate growing up in any sort of way. And that's exactly what my freshman year was like in dorms. The freshman dorms are the absolute worst of any of the dorms, and we all know that personally. Yeah, they've renovated them over the years, but you live there for a semester, they're going to be pretty beat up. I mean, it's what people do. And I want to pose this question in my conclusion. Is it possible that treating people like children causes them to act like children? So I'm once again all for having the option of being able to live off campus. I don't believe that the majority of the case would be that it's more expensive. I live in a house that's actually very notably less expensive than living on campus in any of the dorms that I lived in throughout my college career. And I live closer to campus than I did when I lived on campus last semester. And one thing that I noticed while living in dorms is that you have groups of people that congregate together. You have small groups, and it leaves room for people being left out, because you can have roommates that don't get along that only hang out with a certain group of people in the dorms. They congregate. And when you live in a house, yes, there's a chance that you can do that, but you can't just walk down the hallway and spend your whole semester in your roommate's room, or your friend's room instead of your room with your roommate. You have to have a social dynamic within your house. You can't just, you're signing a lease, and it's very difficult to get out of a lease. It's a lot easier to just switch roommates. And if you can't accept the responsibility of having to pay bills, do it the same way you would have done it if you lived on campus. Have your parents help you out with the bills. Have your parents teach you how to be responsible as an adult. Have them facilitate that. That's what they're there for. They're your parents, they're your support group. If you don't have parents, you probably have guardians. You have someone helping you get to this point. And if you got here all on your own, then you're obviously ready to live off campus. That's pretty much what I conclude with. Thank you very much.
Let's also give Brian and Alyssa another round of applause because they improvised their whole arguments. That's pretty cool. Okay, and now you guys will have your chance. You'll have your chance to vote again. Keep in mind that also it may not be the side that you necessarily agree on, but more of who presented the best argument. Oh, it's the same. Ryan and Alyssa are A, Nick and Rory are B.
It doesn't look like it. Are you sure it's...
No, but we'll just keep it the same the whole time. You guys won't be any over. And it looks like Ryan and Alyssa won that round. And on to our last topic, I guess the most controversial one, is should PumpkinFest happen next year? Some questions we just want you to think about is, do you think after all the riotous behavior and things that happened this year at PumpkinFest, should it happen again? And something else to also think about is, if you do agree with that, how do you think the negative impact it will have on the city of Keene? So the side that says PumpkinFest should happen next year is Alyssa and Rory, and then PumpkinFest shouldn't happen next year is Ryan and Nick. You guys are ready.
One more time, my name is Alyssa, and this time we'll be arguing for PumpkinFest should happen next year. The event should take place. So I'm sure everybody in here has their kind of their own experience with what happened with PumpkinFest. But if you were downtown, I'm sure it was very positive. Nobody downtown knew what was going on. The riots were not happening at Pumpkin Festival. They were happening during the festival, which is, I'm sure most of you don't know because they didn't get the same media coverage. Riots were happening at other colleges the same day, the same weekend. We're not the only crazy ones who do this. This happens on a pretty regular basis. It just so happened that we got the media coverage. And if the festival goes on to happen next year, we need to be able to show people that this is not what our school is about. This is not the reputation we want attached to us. We don't want this negative reputation, and we shouldn't have it because it didn't happen at the college. It didn't happen at Pumpkin Festival. It happened off campus with a lot of students who don't even go to this school or people who don't even live in this state. And we should not have to take responsibility for those random people coming in who decided to trash our community, which we also live in, and then they decided to leave. Pumpkin Festival is not about partying. It's about a family-oriented pumpkin festival. I'm sure a lot of you carved pumpkins on campus, saw the costume parade downtown with all of the little kids. That's what Pumpkin Festival is about. It's about families going out from not only Keene, but from the state, from all around New England. This is a famous event, and a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people, come to carve pumpkins, come to see the pumpkins, and they're not worried about what's going on away from the festival. And economically, Pumpkin Festival is irreplaceable to the local economy. Keene is run by a lot of family-owned businesses, small businesses, and they have been quoted time and time again in our own school paper and in the Keene Sentinel that the business they do on that one day is as much as twice as good as any other day of the year. They do so much better, not only with the money, the percentage of profits that they're making, but just with the publicity that they're getting. They're gaining customers from all around New England, and that's not something they can just do any other way. So that's my argument for why Pumpkin Festival should continue to happen. Thank you.
All right, I have 3 concepts that I'm going to emphasize here. One of which is the fact that it has been hyped up throughout the years, and it's reached a level as to what we experienced past Pumpkin Fest. The second concept is it puts neighborhoods at risk. And the third concept is that finances are not more valuable than ethics. So really going in depth with the first one, I want to point out history doesn't always repeat itself, but there are instances where it does. And I think in this instance, because of the past trend, the number of years we've been here, especially myself being a senior, my freshman year, it was not like anything it's been in the past 2 years. It was a very chilled out, relaxed kind of session. Maybe you had a couple friends up per person, and it wasn't like it was. These past 2 years, I've had instances where people basically were hugely rioting. This past one was rioting. The year before was basically thousands of people in the backyard that was uncontrolled. And the hype of the media has put the attention span at Keene State where, everybody in the region that does not go here is going to come for this one weekend, and they're all hyped about it. They don't necessarily have friends who go here. And you have a larger percentage of people in the community who cannot handle it. And it's going to keep happening. I understand that's a fallacy where history does not always repeat itself, but it's going to happen because of this case, where all the media keeps hyping it up. And the fact that basically they have to call a chopper in for this instance, that's ridiculous. In the past of New Hampshire's history, they've only had 2 instances where they had to call in that many police officers across the state, and they had to call in people from Vermont to come into the state of New Hampshire to be able to control this. And I want to point out a really important factor. There was a story, we had previous talk about this as a community right after. There was a woman that said she called the cops on Pumpkin Fest night. She had a robber in her house, or coming into her house intruding. And that robber, the police officer said to her, stay in your home, you'll be safe, lock the door. We cannot assist you at this point in time. Are you going to allow it to happen next year again, if this does happen? People in the community that were not part of Pumpkin Fest could not be taken care of, that needed to be taken care of. And you're putting the community at risk. I understand Keene State is not associated directly with Pumpkin Fest, and we have our own deal, but Pumpkin Fest is what creates this to happen. The idea of having Pumpkin Fest, the idea you have minds, let's party hard, and this is what ends up coming of it. And really to go on the fact that you can say, businesses derive a great level of profit throughout this experience, but where's the line? Are you going to say, as long as you make money, you can have this outcome? No, it's not. We don't respect what happened within our community. Are we going to be willing to put ourselves at risk again? If the media hypes up over this again next year, and they expect it to happen, it's going to happen. They're going to basically look at Keene State from that point forward potentially as a media party school. We have the opportunity today to represent what we really are. And if we have it happen again, then it's basically going to set an image in stone where you can't change it. And that's why we believe that Pumpkin Fest should not be allowed to happen next year. Thank you.
Okay. So here's the reality of PumpkinFest and why it's continued year after year for the last 20 years or so. The money. PumpkinFest brings in millions, literally millions of dollars to Keene's local businesses within a single weekend. More accurately, it's most of the time, for many businesses, it's 40% of their annual income. 40%. Think about that. Imagine businesses losing about half of their income. It's devastating. Companies die due to 40% losses. Is that something Keene can afford? With such stakes, the issue is pretty much crowd control. And this PumpkinFest had a record amount of police and showed an enormous lack of control and coordination. With such an out-of-control situation, you would imagine the police would have used all their resources. They would have brought out the barricade, they would have done anything. They didn't. They used about 50% of their budget. Now, Ryan, you used the example of a woman having no access to the police when she had trespassers on her lawn. They said they simply couldn't help, and let's not put the blame anywhere else. I mean, the police were entirely in the wrong. Having no resources to resolve domestic issues is just unacceptable. And if the other half of the budget was even touched, it's possible we wouldn't be arguing about this today. So they have 1 whole year from now to plan responses to crowds and parties. And the lack of police coordination and the lack of control shouldn't warrant punishment for the local businesses. PumpkinFest is too valuable to dismiss so early. The economic benefits structure this town, and without it, businesses could die. And condemning student activity will be the final nail in the coffin. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. I disagree with you. I'm going to start by just articulating 3 main points, and then I will probably be rebutting you in the midst of it all. If the trend and image has been progressively worse on the college's behalf since we have arrived at school, I know it has since I've been here. I didn't get to witness firsthand the events last year, but I was told by some pretty seasoned veterans of PumpkinFest that they were completely overwhelmed. And that to me is grounds for it getting out of hand. We've seen a tremendous increase in the turnout each year, and it hasn't been a good result any of the years that I've been here. It was a beautiful thing when I got here. I got to see Main Street, and it's devolved into this completely chaotic nightmare that I wasn't even allowed to leave my house during it because of how ridiculous things got. We were all affected by it. We all know that it wasn't a reflection of the Keene student body. It was a vast minority, and it was an influx of people that didn't belong here, that don't have to deal with the consequences. They don't live here, so they trash the place. And if we can't control the random people that show up here, we shouldn't host an event where those people are able to do so. And if it does go down again, why should we allow the college to continually dampen and put on the line its reputation in lieu of this profit? If it's endangering lives, we had some serious injuries. Kids were getting bottles thrown at them. Even the kids who weren't at the party, families had to walk through that on the way back. They had to walk around these riot squads. They had to walk around these pepper balls whizzing over their heads. They had to walk around a helicopter whizzing over their heads. They had to see the Pentagon's generous money that they give to the state police department in action. They got to see state police in Army-grade uniforms. Everyone thought it was the National Guard. It wasn't. It was every unit in the state of New Hampshire and some surrounding states that had to respond to this. They had plenty of other crimes they could have been dealing with. They're here to protect people. They're not here for riot control. They're able to respond to that. They're equipped to. But it shouldn't be their responsibility. They shouldn't be frightened of an event every year. And once again, if Keene State students are not only responsible, but we were there, so we do all share some responsibility, but all of us have seen the arrest statistics, and we know that it's very much a minority that Keene State students are not to blame entirely for this. and to bring up your argument, is this profit really worth the risk? Are we putting profit over lives when we host this event? And if your business is completely reliant on an economic stimulus package that happens every year due to a massive flux of people, maybe you need to reevaluate your business plan. You can get creative. You can figure out ways to get that business. We live with a college. There's this huge student body. You can make deals. It's very workable. We can do without it, and I think we should.
Okay, so in conclusion about why Pumpkin Festival should continue to happen next year, yes, people were in danger in that particular situation, but whose fault was that? All of the police responding, they completely mishandled the situation, and that's not our fault. That's not our problem to fix. That's something that needs to be reevaluated within the infrastructure of the police, the state police, anyone who's responding. And they need to figure out crowd control. That's not the student body's problem. That's not the college's problem. It's the responsibility of Pumpkin Festival, which is run through Keene, New Hampshire. It is not our responsibility to control the influx of people to the area. And endangering lives, well, I don't think anyone's life was truly in danger, but that's just my opinion. And if your kids saw a state police helicopter, maybe you shouldn't have been walking them through a riot at midnight, but that's also just my opinion. And as far as the economic benefits, you cannot replace making up half of your profits in one day with any other business plan. There's no way to strategize that. It's either you make the money in that day or you don't make the money at all. And for the number of small businesses in this area, that could be detrimental. And do we really want to lose every business in the downtown area because they want to continue to blame the college and hold us responsible for not being allowed to have Pumpkin Fest? That seems a little irrational. So that's in conclusion, and we believe that it should continue to happen, so thank you. And thank you to the first responders because they were amazing and I have nothing against them.
All right, so look at this as a whole. I understand that Keene State students, for the most part, were not responsible for what happened, and that's totally understandable. But even though we were not responsible, there are other people who are responsible, and that situation is going to continue to occur, and we're going to have to deal with the consequences of it. We had to clean up the next day, and we had to take responsibility for other people's actions, because we care about the community. If we care about the community, then we care to not allow this to happen again. And it's going to happen again if Pumpkin Fest happens again. I understand, as they pointed out, that it's a separate event, and that the town itself has their Pumpkin Fest, which is 100% okay, but the college atmosphere aspect to it is tied to it, and you can't change that. It's been an image that's been set across the board throughout the past couple years, and it's not going to change in the future to stop that problem from occurring. Regardless if they know their friends are up here or not, they're going to come up here and they're probably going to crash somewhere. If not, they have a hotel booked. So that's the issue we're dealing with on that end of it. And to point out the fact that the police didn't really do their job to the extent of what they could be, the police were not even expecting this to occur. The college was not expecting it to occur. They planned as much as they possibly could have. And there was no way to basically change what they did. They were dealing with the appropriate actions that they believed to be responsible to fix the problem as they occurred. And there's no way to all of a sudden think on your feet and say, oh wait, we did this wrong, we gotta do something else now. They did it to protect the people, and nobody ended up dying from it. There were injuries that happened, but the reason nobody ended up dying could potentially be linked to the fact that there was police to basically assure that the environment was safe and there was no actual instances where it went too out of control, even though it was already out of control. And Pumpkin Fest, it's a great opportunity to be able to have people come up here, and it might be the business end of it as to what makes people survive financially, but the business can always change their ways. I'm a finance or a management major, and I understand that. There's always different creative ways to come up with opportunities to be able to generate that kind of income again. This is just one instance where it works out in their favor. Who's to say something else can't work out? And we have to look at this on our end. Do we want to experience that again next year? I didn't feel like this was Pumpkin Fest. I felt like this was something totally different, And I saw the whole thing firsthand. I was actually in the student center. I was walking to my friend's house, who happens to be Nick right here, and we were gonna chill out, and it turned out the whole riot was happening. I ran into the student center, and they had to lock the doors a couple seconds after because people were trying to invade the student center out of the riot. And I didn't think that was PumpkinFest. I saw the whole thing firsthand. I saw everything from like the third floor of the student center, and I was disgusted. So to have that risk incur again, there's other opportunities for us to have fun. We have fun every weekend. We don't need PumpkinFest. We have Keene State student that we're a part of. We don't want other people invading it. And that's why I think it shouldn't happen. I love PumpkinFest in itself, but there reaches a point where it's not really appropriate. And I think we've reached that point. So that's why I'm proposing the idea that PumpkinFest should not happen next year, which is unfortunate, but I think it's the rational approach. Thank you.
Before we vote, I just have a few little announcements. First, I just wanted to kind of plug our club. We meet Wednesdays in the Media Arts Center at 7:30. Anyone can come, and we're not all about competitive debate. If you are interested in debating first thing other schools or up here, you definitely have that option, but some people just come to just talk about different current events and things of particular interest to the club. So if you're intimidated by public speaking, you don't have to speak publicly, but you can just come and speak and voice your opinions on different things happening on campus or in politics or just around the world in general. And again, that's Wednesdays at 7:30 in the Media Arts Center, room 155. Also, I know some people are here because they got an extra credit assignment and can also be signing any slips that you guys have after we have an open forum discussion on the different topics that we talked about. You guys will be able to comment on some of the things or even just pose questions if you're interested, and also can also be facilitating that. And now feel free to vote for which one you think posed the best argument. Again, this side's A, the other side is B. Well, it looks like we have a tie. So whoever voted for C, you ruined the fun for everyone. So
Take back your vote.
Should we have a
Vote for
revote?
one of them right now. Who's it?
well, I guess we'll just keep it as a tie. So thank you all for participating.